You wanna grow and go and get there. Sometimes upward, sometimes nowhere. You've got the ideas, you're looking up at the clouds, but how do you start standing out of the crowd? So build it with us from the ground up.
Hey everybody, welcome to From the Ground Up. I am Zach Conway. I'm here with my co-host Kelsey McKenna. What's going on, Kelsey?
Not much. Excited to be here. Excited for this topic today. And we have a guest for the first time. So I'm really excited about that.
Absolutely. So before we jump to the guest, what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah. So today I thought we could talk about holistic financial planning. So I've been having a ton of conversations with advisors who are early on in their journey. So they've either recently established their own firm or maybe they did it a while ago, but they're trying to kind of build like we talked about last time, sustainable organic growth. And I'm having a lot of conversations around, well, what is your offering today? What is it that how do you serve your clients today? And it seems like most folks are saying they offer holistic financial planning, but what that means to them seems to vary quite a bit. So I thought we could talk about that today with our guest.
Our very special guest today, who I will introduce to the podcast. So today we have the CEO of Conway Wealth, a boutique wealth advisory firm that empowers its clients to align life and wealth. And he happens to be my dad. Welcome, Michael Conway.
There you go.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Kelsey. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning.
Great to be here with you. So looking forward to our chat. And you nailed the intro, by the way, with describing.
It's a good tagline. I wonder who helped, bring that to life in that business. So yeah, it's awesome to have you here and to talk about this topic. So we'll kind of tee that question up and let you run with it for a second. So this idea of everybody talking about holistic financial planning, it's what we do. It's on the Conway Wealth website. It's on many advisors' websites. But trying to understand, what does that actually mean for us when we say that? So in the wealth business, in Conway Wealth, for you, what does that entail? What are the services that are actually included in holistic financial planning in your mind?
Sure. So I'll jump into that. And one of the things you're going to hear me talk about is, well, first of all, you have to ask the client, what do they need? What are their issues? What's important to them? And what are the hot topics, right? Those are the things they want to hit first. But any good financial plan is going to need, does the client have the right wills in place? So the estate plan, huge. Are they insured properly? What does the cash flow look like? So budgeting, retirement modeling, cash flow planning. And that whole cash flow planning aspect of this whole thing is huge because it helps drive decisions on all fronts. What you're doing in the estate plan, what you're doing with insurance, what you're doing obviously with investments. Tax planning, so as it relates to the estate plan and income tax, saving clients tax money is huge. That helps pay for a lot of different things in the context of a total plan. Donor advised fund, 529 plans, health savings accounts, the list goes on, but all of these things should be incorporated in a detailed financial plan. But start with, when you do your discovery, and we'll unpack this a bit, but start with, what are the hot topics? Are we insured properly? Do we need wills? But those, I think, are some of the big key components to start. But again, what does the client want? What is their burning need? What's their open issue?
I've heard you describe it as, we're the CFO for a family, which basically means if it relates to money at all, we're involved. We're helping to oversee it. And so there really are so many different aspects of what that means, as you just described: tax planning, estate planning, cash flow, budgeting, all these different areas.
All of it.
And so holistic is arguably the right term to describe it. And to your point, what's being prioritized and exactly how we shape those services, as you just said, is going to be shaped around that discovery experience, what we're learning, what the main issues are, so that you can really shape the plan and prioritize what needs to happen first. Oh my gosh, the will was done in like 1985 and, there's health issues and whatever. And so what's going to need to happen first in that process, is really derived from those initial meetings.
So you're asking, so restate the question for me. You're asking my process as it relates to how I go.
Yeah, I guess exactly. Dig into that a little bit more. If you are, that discovery process, how do you then decide what's going to come next in how you deliver those services? So here's the lineup of what we can do, but I'm going to do this, and therefore I'm going to do this from a, delivery of services perspective.
Yeah. So great. Thank you. So the way we do it, so we start with, we have an initial discussion with the client, and then we decide together, are we going to move to a discovery? And in that discovery, I'm going to get all the information I need to start to do that detailed planning that I kind of went through some of the hot topics. But I'm also going to do an assessment as it relates to how we're going to manage their money, and to really unpack and discern their risk profile, their time horizon, and what they value as it relates to money management. So our process goes from, we call it the appraisal, into discovery. And again, one of the big things that I used to do is I used to historically, back in the day, you've heard me tell this story, but I would provide a financial plan that was about a foot thick. And I used to think I had to coach people and tell them how smart I was and go through every piece of you have to listen to me for 3 hours because I'm going to go through every aspect of this financial plan. And I remember people, their eyes glazing over after an hour and a half because I was just trying to cover too much. And then the problem that I ended up with, guess what? Nothing ended up happening. I then couldn't get the people re-engaged to get the wills, do the money management, and do all the financial planning and put the things in place to help me get paid to do my day job, to do all the things I'm describing. So learning from those failings, what we institute, again, I'll keep saying it, appraisal to discovery. And then in discovery, I want to get all the data points I need to do the whole plan, but also how I'm going to build the investment portfolio. We get the investment statements at that time. And then the next meeting we hold with the family is the investment presentation. And there's a method to this madness, right? Because the way that I get compensated to do all this work is the fees that we generate when we do the money management. And so I need a commitment from the family that coming out of the discovery and into the investment presentation, we're on the same page with what I heard, and they're comfortable with what I'm proposing. And then we have what we call the mutual commitment meeting. And in that meeting, we decide together, did all that make sense with what we presented in the investment plan? And are we going to work together? So we then implement the investment plan. And then we start to dig into, so 45 days after the investment plan, we get back together to figure out, what questions do you have? Do you understand what we've implemented? Do you understand your statements or your online access? And then from there, we will trip into review sessions, whether it's quarterly or each family is going to be a little bit different. In those review sessions, we will then go to some of what we call the advanced planning of some of those things I listed before. The estate, the insurance, but again, letting them discern what is important. I'm going to stop there to come up for air. Does that make sense? Ask some clarifying questions if you could.
It does. And obviously I'm more familiar with the process, having, experienced it and worked with clients on the Conway side. But what I think is interesting, and maybe we can dig into a bit, is the fact that you're setting expectations essentially from day one that investment management is part of the financial plan. It's not something that they can opt in or out of to have a relationship with you as the advisor. It is, as we say, table stakes in the relationship. It's part of the financial plan. And so you're overseeing it in the context of that broader plan. They're not choosing, hey, I want to do it myself. I want all these services and I'm going to do the money management part by myself over here in the corner with, outside of your purview. So it sounds like when you talk about building that financial plan earlier in your career and doing all that planning work ahead of time, investment management wasn't a part of it. It was you're doing everything else, putting a holistic plan together, putting it out on the table, and then, some of it may get implemented, but, certainly not the investment management component of what you're trying to do for the client.
It's so interesting as I've heard people over the years, the end user of all this, I'm going to do it myself. That would be like me saying, so I have a barn over here on this property, and the roof is I'm having all kinds of issues. So am I really gonna? I have a day job. Am I really gonna go climb on the barn and fix the roof of the barn myself? I'm not gonna do it. It's not gonna. And if I do it, I bet a nickel I'm gonna do it wrong. And to that end, so folks that are gonna do this themselves, when you talk about the money management piece, so you're gonna rebalance, you're gonna tax loss harvest, you're gonna keep yourself in the market when it starts to get really scary. What is that? Mike Tyson saying, I forget what he says, something like everybody's a tough guy till they get punched in the nose or something like that. So this is all easy breezy when the stock market keeps notching higher and higher highs. It's like this, what could go wrong? Well, we haven't had an 08 till, things went down wildly during COVID, but then they bounced right back as the Fed came to the rescue. But we will hit a rough patch again and go into a recession. I've watched people blow their financial plans up completely by trying to do this stuff themselves. So,
Kelsey, I want to pass it to you on a point I know you have about maybe some of the reasons, some of the sort of limiting belief reasons advisors aren't making it a core component. When we talk about holistic financial planning, why does that not include running the money management component of the financial plan for clients? Why? I know you've had we have a lot of conversations with advisors across the industry. So yeah, share a little bit about sort of like what you're hearing from these advisors as to why they are allowing it to really just be a choice in how they work with the client.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed a trend with some of the advisors I'm working with where it's either optional or they don't do it. So they don't manage the money. They're just doing strictly planning. And I've noticed the folks coming to work with us at Seeds oftentimes are transitioning away from that model. And what I'm hearing is that the reason they were doing it is because it seems like there's almost like guilt or like fear around offering money management and the need to justify the fee almost. And that's what led them to maybe offer planning only. But then what they're struggling with is, I'm hearing one, stickiness. So doing just the planning and not managing the investments, there's a stickiness issue with the client. But then also, like you just mentioned, Mike, people basically just messing up the plan. So you can do all the planning right, but if the client is doing DIY with the investments, then things can go really wrong and it impacts the plan. There's also experience issues that pop up that I hear about, such as like, well, I need to know what's in the investment. So I'm asking for statements. I'm asking for them to explain it to me or tell it to me. So there's a lot of like operational issues that lead to experience problems as well. But those are, I think, a lot of the reason why they weren't offering it originally is because there's almost like this fear or shame around it to some extent. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's definitely what I've sensed from the advisors who are moving away from that model.
Mike, can you speak to that sort of limiting belief? I don't know, like going back earlier in your career of like, I have to be this in order to feel confident to do the investment management component of this. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to leave it to be this sort of optional thing.
I can absolutely speak to it. I spent a lot of my early career with the same limiting beliefs, like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I want to get paid to do my work. Wait, what? Yeah, no kidding. And it's kind of a superpower when the light finally goes off. I'm like, yeah, I need to be well compensated to do my work. I'm providing tremendous value, right? The people working on the barn aren't going to do it for free. So once I figure it out, I need to be compensated. I need to be well compensated, and I need to have a phenomenal raving fans service model, right? Because the clients have need. Go figure. They need RMDs and they need withdrawals and they need to take money out of their 529s, and the list goes on and on. There's service requests constantly, and it's expensive to run a service model. So we need to get compensated. And guess what? The end user, when explained properly, they're like, well, that's what we would have expected, right? Because they're paying for they're getting their barn fixed or their oven or whatever it is. It's like, it's the way the system works. But as a young advisor, you do have that limiting belief, like, will they want to pay me for this? Yeah, they need to. And those that don't, by the way, aren't going to be good clients anyway, right?
What's interesting though, so the psychology of, and there's all, the industry continues to argue and debate about the AUM based fee. And because they're for the advisor, like Kelsey, your point is there's this psychology of, if I'm actually tethering the fee to the assets under management, then, so Mike, that value, what is the value then that you're delivering specifically? So you're doing all the financial planning work and it's compensating you for that. But then everybody goes, oh, I have to have a unique special value related to the money management component because the fee is tethered to that. And I need to tap dance and show the special thing I'm doing in the investment portfolio. And if I don't have 15 CFAs on staff to come do, again, hyperbolic sort of, but this is the sort of mentality of advisors. I need all this technical skill set and all this bravado to come into a portfolio review and pitch why we're doing all these, esoteric cool things in the investment portfolio, because we're tethering our value to that for some reason, because the AUM fee is based on the AUM. Tell us about that, sort of maybe mentality shift in your career, where maybe earlier on you thought the value is technical skill set. I need to be Warren Buffett, and maybe how you think today about what is the value you're actually creating. So you're doing all the value in financial planning, but the value specifically for money management, just your thoughts on what's actually creating that value as it relates to the money management.
Yeah. So to be clear, we need to build strong investment portfolios with really good asset allocations and monitor it properly. It's table stakes. I said in another podcast, we need to be Navy SEALs with the all of these things, right? We need to be a student of the business. But the real value proposition comes in the deep planning, the money we can save our clients in tax ideas, and the behavioral aspect as it relates to money management. So if the AUM fee-based model is the conduit that we get compensated to do our thing, then we can also help the family get hooked up with a really good estate planning attorney and then monitor that process. We can talk about tax ideas or setting up the donor advised fund and gifting appreciated security and all the other things that we do with deep planning. If we are selling that we are going to be as good or better than Warren Buffett, then we're misleading ourselves and we're misleading the end user of this. Because you might get it right in a particular year and be, oh, I'm the hero, but guess what? I've been doing this a long time. You're going to stub your toe. So that's not the value proposition. The real value proposition is in all the deep planning. So great asset allocation, yes. Deep financial planning in what we've mentioned. And what we haven't talked about, think about the behavioral aspect. I have watched people call me up and live through these different market cycles where they're brilliant. They want to add money to their portfolio at the wrong time, and you know how many times I've heard, now I know market timing doesn't work, but what I'm going to describe to you isn't actually market timing. I've heard it thousands of times. So it's like a different, you're going to paint it, red or blue or what, you're just going to paint it a different color. You're saying you want to time the market. I had a situation where I had a large family, so a large investment portfolio, and we did all the deep planning. But COVID hit. And I don't, the stock market it went down something like 30%. And they called me up and they're like, shouldn't we get out? I want to sell everything. This is a very large portfolio. I want to sell everything to cash. Talk about a value. I spent the next 50 minutes convincing that family not to do that. And we saved the family millions of dollars by keeping them invested. And guess what? Now, not going to always work. But in this situation, the markets came back quickly because the Fed came in with a lot of capital and reduced interest rates and all the above. But the behavioral aspect of keeping people from doing their version of market timing, coupled with the deep planning, to me is the big value proposition.
I just want to so I actually just got clarity on something while you were both talking. So we talked about this first group of advisors who I've been talking to recently, who they're really they're struggling with their business model because of this fear. And they know they're not Warren Buffett, like the way you say it, Zach. They know they're not Warren Buffett. So that's prevented them from making this part of their model. And then there's this other group of advisors that I've seen quite a few of as well, who are actually doing the opposite, which is what you're kind of getting at, Zach, in this last example, where they're basically like, I'm not Warren Buffett, but I need to pretend I am. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And they have a lot of anxiety. They have a lot of complexity. They have, they're coming in being like I have to do a lot. I have to prove a lot. I have to put a lot in front of the client. I have to really justify this and make sure that they know why I'm the best person. And they're kind of operating in this cycle of anxiety because they know deep down that they're not. So there's kind of those two manifestations, and what they're not doing is what you just said, Mike, which is just sitting with the fact that it really is about serving the client and helping with these behavioral components and being the expert that across all of these different tactics and tools and ways of managing their financial life, basically. But there are those two manifestations that stem from that same place of just knowing that can't be their value prop because they're not necessarily going to outperform the market.
And you can put that mask on, right? You can try to talk the talk and do this show. And it's impossible to back up because at the end of the day, and we've talked about this a lot, but this is so pervasive across the industry. It's so bizarre. We still do it. We still sell this I'm a better money manager story. And then you have to back it up and do your presentations and whatever. And it all just goes back to make this tangible. And Mike, you can, add to this. Again, such specific, it comes down to word choice, because we've also talked about before, fear and greed is so powerful that if you plant a seed in somebody's head about you're going to be better at protecting their assets in some special way and tactically reallocate in market time or get them better performance, anything you say early on in the relationship that speaks to that, fear and greed is so powerful that they latch onto it, and therefore your value is tethered to that forever. That's it. They're on that train. And so your relationship with them forever is defined by that. You have to go do that show, rather than saying, number one, investment management is part of what we do, right? Yeah. It is absolutely part of what we do for all the reasons we've touched on. By the way, the administrative aspect alone, the amount of stories, Kelsey, you've shared with me of these advisors who have let it be an option. So the client's doing it themselves, but the client calls the advisor every other day to say, hey, should I do this? Should I do this? I don't know how to download my statement. I need to move money into this account. Can you help? That alone can become a problem for advisors. But if you make it table stakes and communicate that it's table stakes, the next thing to say is my value is not to be Warren Buffett. It's to apply the same behavioral abilities that many advisors have when it comes to financial planning, right? Asking the right questions, understanding people's anxieties, having deep conversations about what they're trying to decide in their financial lives. Have a skill set of applying that to the money management conversation. It's what you're describing, Mike, in that example of during COVID. It's not that you're doing some special tactical reallocation and market timing. It's that you're talking somebody off the ledge. You do it every day in a financial planning context. It's applying that to investment management. And we're trying to convince advisors about that's easier because many advisors are good at that. It's easier to just reapply that to money management rather than trying to become the next Warren Buffett, right? Don't read the CFA books, read the behavioral finance books. Focus on the relationship aspects and the behaviors that you do everywhere else in your business and apply it to money management. Now, I'll caveat, and then Mike will pass it to you because you can speak to this. There is a baseline knowledge base that we need, right? We can't go into, investment management conversations and just make up how to build portfolios.
No.
So I do think for advisors, it's like, where is that line, right? Like how you can't, go make it up and kind of figure it out as you go. But how far do you need to go? So again, like from your perspective, when you started out, maybe your mentality was like, I do need to be the Warren Buffett. But as that shifted, like what is that line? What is the baseline table stakes thing, knowledge base that you need? And then if you apply the behavioral aspects, you're delivering that bigger value we're talking about.
Yeah. So I think we do need a very significant knowledge base. And I think it's imperative that we become students of the business, right? So I went out and became a CFP and a CHFC. So these things, so I think it's important to get a knowledge base for sure. I think it's also, again, I described it before as a superpower, to describe to people how we're getting paid and why, and what services we're going to be providing for that fee. But if you set yourself up, we keep saying it, to be the next Warren Buffett or better, I've seen some of these Wall Street firms they can have a team of 40 CFAs, and whatever their allocation is with this particular example, there's times I've seen them underperform the S&P 500 in my example by hundreds of basis points. Right? So we need to have a strong baseline of knowledge.
And then that's what they're judged by, or they should be judged by, right?
Well,
because they're selling that as their value.
If that's what they're selling as their value proposition, that doesn't mean you can slap a portfolio together and just call it a day. It needs to be a great allocation that you're monitoring closely. And then you're going into all the deep planning and providing value on all these other areas. Right? To me, this is where the magic is. If I can save somebody tax loss harvesting, I had a plan this past year. I saved somebody, let's say, $80,000 just in tax loss harvesting. It's a pretty big win, right?
Can you speak to, I think what's hard, again, back to this fear and greed idea, it's hard to quantify the value. And you just did it in your example, right? Of millions of dollars saved by stopping somebody from making a silly market timing decision. So that's quantified. It's generally harder. And again, why psychologically advisors default to, like, I need to show the numbers. I need to show an outperformance number. I need to show something tangible. And this qualitative, I'm your behavioral coach to avoid bad decisions, is a harder story to explain the value, right? And so I'm just curious your thoughts on that. Like going into meetings, especially early on in relationships where maybe the client walks in the door, again, the broader topic of, unfortunately, clients also think that our value is about outperformance sometimes. So they're walking in with that expectation. And so, yes, we need the expectation set, but we also need to break a bias with the person who's walking in the door. And then how do you quantify that behavioral value early on to properly set those expectations? I guess speak to that.
Yeah, you know what it comes down to is just being so confident in what you're doing, and that confidence comes with doing it a lot, and also understanding that not everybody's going to be a good client. There's different terms, right? We can label people. They could be a family steward, or they could be the vernacular of, let's call them a gambler, where they want to beat the S&P every year. I won't take the gambler as a client because I'm going to get it one year and maybe not another. I want to take the family that I can help meet their overall objectives. Tie everything back to the cash flow. What's your objective? You want to retire at what age and live on how much per month? I've got you. I can do that all day long, right? And so if I'm getting a whole room full of gamblers, I'm going to have a few good years when the market's going great, and I'm going to. We don't want that. We want our value proposition to be wonderful allocation, great deep planning, and behavioral work with families. So that I have clients now going. So we talk about people that want to sell when things are getting scary. You also flip it the other way. People are going, shouldn't we be taking on more risk and have more money in the stock market? Because no, this is musical chairs. We have a plan. You wanted to retire in 10 years and live on 20,000 a month. I've got you. But I'm not going to let you do that thing, because when this reverses, that's not, I know your risk profile. I've taken you through an assessment.
That is so just to hone on that for a second. So again, you talk about the discovery process, and specifically those personas of who these people are as investors, so that you can understand what biases they're really walking in with, right? Before it's, I'm just going to present, I'm going to talk about investing and how we do it. But if you're asking those questions about what's in their head when it comes to investing, and therefore their expectations of you, you know what to, redirect or attempt to fix. Or isn't it cool that you don't actually have to take everybody on as a client? You can, if you have
That's
lead flow, you
magic.
can make those
That's
decisions.
magic.
Right?
When you uncover that and learn that, so you have to be prospecting. But to me, you know what another superpower is? Really getting to know your client. So when we do that discovery, I end up finding out how they take their martini and the pet parakeets. I want to know everything about that family. We do a family tree. I want to know all the people in their universe. I also have a solution. We also have a solution called the Life and Wealth Network, where we provide value, life beyond the numbers, where we have a lot of different solutions we can refer families to outside of financial planning, whether it's addiction or where to get a villa in the Caribbean or whatever it might be. We want to provide value in all these different areas. And if we hang our hat on that one thing, it's not going to work. I have, over the years, worked with a lot of Wall Street professionals as well. I've watched some of these folks make a lot of money on a trade. I mean, a lot of money. But then I've seen many of them give it back over the subsequent years because it's hard, right? It's not easy to do. Blocking and tackling, good allocation, and all these other areas is where you're really going to drive value.
Kelsey, I want to pass it to you on some, other tangible takeaways. But one thing that's coming to mind, Mike, on that assessment process is, again, the risk component, and really understanding risk in a multidimensional way, and having a sort of co-adopted process to get to the heart of what that allocation should ultimately be. It's not just, hey, you're this number and this is the allocation, and there's no sort of deeper discussion as to what that means. They need to understand that based on these inputs, by the way, this is the first part of the financial plan, right? Again, just like tying it all together, money management and implementing that portfolio is based on that longer term plan and the risk target that they should be aligned with, and understanding and having conversation about, and hopefully not, deviating from, unless there's dramatic changes. But that conversation has to be deep. You have to agree to it. You have to be on the same page about it, because again, any little seedling of this is about outperformance and us making decisions in the future, you, as Mike, as you described, life and wealth network, estate planning, helping families with addiction issue, all of this immense value can just disappear when they have this hook that you need to outperform or you need to do something special in the portfolio. All of that value gets deleted if you set those expectations incorrectly early on. So that deep assessment related to risk, everything in their head about investing. We obviously believe it's important to understand values as it relates to investing, setting an expectation that money management is core to a financial plan. It's part of what we do, and that our value in delivering that is the core of that is the behavioral aspects, not, anything special from a tactical standpoint. But Kelsey, anything else you think we're missing that we should touch on before we get out of here?
No, I always bring this back to experience, which is what you guys are kind of circling around. And I do think if you're an advisor who falls into one of these two camps, either you're kind of afraid to manage the money because you don't feel like you can justify the fee or whatever it is that's going on, or the other side of the coin where you're doing this, but you are feeling the need to constantly prove yourself and constantly talk about why you're outperforming or how you're going to outperform or manager selection, whatever it is that you're pitching in those early meetings with your clients. Really take a step back and think about, one, why is this prospect or client coming to you? That's the first thing. Like, why are they in the room? And two, what is truly in your control? Because any expectations that you're setting in those initial conversations with your clients should be expectations that you can meet, that is within your control to be able to meet over time. And I think just kind of asking those two questions, if you fall into these camps, and really thinking about how you could position investment management as part of this holistic financial planning offering, I think that's a good place to start. If you fall into one of these camps, really think about the experience that you're creating based on the expectations that you're setting. And there are, pitfalls on both ends. If you're one or the other, there are experience issues in both that can lead to, losing trust that you're working really hard to build early in the relationship around all these other topics. And it can also lead to, churn. It can lead to all the operational complexity that we've talked about in other episodes. There's so many things that come up if you are setting the expectation that you're going to be able to deliver something that's really not in your control, and that that you have no control over. Or if you're even setting up a business model that's not going to work for you. To your early point, Mike, if the business model isn't going to work for you or the client, that's an issue as well.
Yeah, to the old joke, the old adage, we're going to lose money on this client, but it's okay because we're going to make it up with volume.
Right.
Just rinse and repeat. It's okay. We have to make money to do this and provide wonderful service. And speaking boldly into that relationship and be empowered as an advisor. This is how we get paid. And here's all the suite between allocation and in the investments, deep financial planning, and all these other things that we can provide and value we can bring to families. It's amazing. And guess what? The clients need it, and they want it. It just has to be explained properly.
And that breeds confidence for the advisor. If it really is in your control and you really have done the work to be the expert who comes into the room and provides that advice and guidance and coaching and all the things, right? Like, if that is what leads to confidence, and that's what's going to lead to feeling justified in making money, with the offering that you're putting out there.
Yes, for sure.
This has been great. Hopefully a lot of tangible takeaways for advisors to start thinking about, as they are deciding, are we going to have investment management fall under that broad umbrella of the term holistic financial planning? Lots to consider. Mike, something we do here before we wrap, we go around the horn and just talk about anything we're sort of excited about right now or anything we're learning that might be interesting to the listeners. So, Kelsey, why don't you kick us off on anything on your list?
Yeah, we're close. We're right in between the holidays while we're recording here, so I'm really not not learning anything, I will say. But I am very excited because my parents who live in San Diego, they just got into town last night, so we're going to be spending some quality time together with the fam coming up here this weekend. So I'm very excited about that.
Learning how hopefully to not lose your
Not,
sanity
yeah,
during the
I'm
holidays.
continuing to learn how to not lose my sanity with 3 young kids in the holiday season. Yes, that's what I'm learning.
That's a good plan. Mike, anything going on?
So the thing that I'm doing now, I always try to do some learning, and in particular, as we head into the next year, I don't know if you can see this book. I'll hold it there for a split second, but I'm reading this book, From Strength to Strength. I have a lot of clients that as they go to the next phase of their lives, right? So whether they were an athlete client or a CEO or a business owner, and they're transitioning towards retirement or something different, I want to be as good as I can be as in coaching those families. And this book is pretty cool. It's by Arthur Brooks and has some good stuff in it. So our clients talk about another value, what we've spent the morning talking about. How do we talk to clients about the transitions that they're facing in life? And how do you add value around a conversation like that?
Love it. My thing, I've talked about before, ChatGPT. I'm always trying to pay attention to what's going on in AI right now. And this will come out later. But this morning, I woke up to an article. It turns out the New York Times has been negotiating with Microsoft and ChatGPT about plagiarism issues with ChatGPT. And now there's an actual filed lawsuit. So it's going to be interesting. Elon Musk was interviewed a little while back about AI claims and ChatGPT claims that it wouldn't be doing this. It wouldn't be scraping information from, news outlets and other media and just repurposing it essentially in the same text and presenting it through ChatGPT. Turns out it looks like it may be, in fact, doing that. So it's just interesting, sort of the fair use laws and what they're allowed to do. It, I think, speaks to there's going to be so many sort of business ripple effects that we start to see as it relates to ChatGPT and AI that's using information from basically every source on the planet. So it's kind of interesting stuff to pay attention to, I think. But with that, Mike, we appreciate you being with us on this podcast episode. Lots of amazing insights that you've shared with the audience. So we appreciate it. And as always, just wanted to share, if anybody wants to learn more about Seeds, come visit us at www.seedsinvestor.com. Come fill out our web form to follow our newsletter, or follow us on LinkedIn or X. We appreciate it, and see you next time.